Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start now. I need my panelists just to come and join me up here on the stage. Oh. Cham, Mercy, could you maybe come and take your seats on the stage? Happiness, where is Happiness? Oh, yeah. Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is the last major session for today. So let's look at the title. You know who I am. I also presented yesterday, Aubrey Duplessis. And the topic for today is when non-tariff measures become non-tariff barriers, standards and technical regulations. Again, quite a technical issue, but the main point for today is down here. The case for mutual recognition. What is the case for mutual recognition? And we have a panel which I will talk about a little bit later. What I plan to do is do just 5 quick slides about non-tariff measures and non-tariff barriers. Then I will move on to the panel, and then I will tell you what we are asking the panel to do. Now, a very quick introduction here is the question, the move from tariff barriers to non-tariff barriers. We all know that when the GATT started in the last century, all the talks, it was all about tariffs and duties. Later it was about quotas. But the point is, the focus for a good few decades was on how much do you pay in terms of import duty when your goods enter the destination country. And over time, tariffs came down tremendously. But as the Uruguay round started, countries were starting to say, you know what, it's fine and well that tariffs are coming down, but overly strict technical regulations and overly strict sanitary and phytosanitary measures are becoming barriers to trade. Although they are legitimate actions, they can go too far. And then they become a non-tariff barrier. So there's another term we just have to look at. A sanitary and a phytosanitary measure and a technical regulation can be a legitimate non-tariff measure. But if it's overdone, it becomes a non-tariff barrier. And when the Uruguay round was negotiated, people were saying, you know what, we really have to look at non-tariff barriers, and we really have to control and limit the impact of technical regulations and SPS measures so that they do not become non-tariff barriers. So just in terms of what then ended up in the Uruguay round in the 2 agreements, the SPS agreement and the TBT agreement, is quite simple. A technical regulation shall not be made more trade restrictive than necessary to fulfill a legitimate objective. So there is a limit to the extent to which a technical regulation can impact the flow of goods into a country. Same for sanitary and phytosanitary measures. They shall not be applied in a manner which would constitute a disguised restriction on international trade. And with us being here in Africa, we have lots of experiences about SPS measures intra-Africa. Also yesterday we spoke about citrus and so on. SPS measures being accused of being a disguised restriction on international trade. And the important point here is we have to look at the fact that the application and the enforcement of a non-tariff measure can also become a barrier to trade. And this is what we are going to talk about today. Although the technical regulation may be fine, although the SPS measure may be fine, the way in which it is applied, the way in which testing is required, the way in which certification is required, the way the customs authority of the national receiving government applies the rules can in itself become an unacceptable non-tariff barrier. So just in terms of final slide from me, when we talk about fulfilling legitimate objectives on the one side, but on the other side, making sure that standards and that technical regulations and SPS measures do not become NTBs. Just explain the sequence a little bit. We normally start out with a standard prescribing what a product requirement is, what it should meet in terms of being accepted. Governments then come along and they turn a standard into a technical regulation, and there's a specific type of technical regulation which you find in the area of food safety, plant health, animal life. It's called an SPS measure. And then, of course, the problem is once you have the measure, you get the term conformity assessment. You have to make sure, how do you verify that the product complies? So you have a testing aspect linked to conformity assessment, and then you get to the thing we are going to talk about today. If you test in country A, can it not be or should it not be accepted in country B? And then you get to mutual recognition. Countries talking to each other say, if you will accept my test outcomes, I will accept your test outcomes. And that is basically the topic for this morning. It is a big issue in Africa. The African Regional Standardization Organization, ARSO. These are two quotes from their report, which they made to the WTO Technical TBT Committee in 2024. And what they said was, listen, it's all fine and well if you harmonize your standards, you make them all the same. You harmonize your test methods, you make them all the same. But if you don't take the next step, which is to recognize each other's testing capacity by way of mutual recognition, then you are not where you want to be. It's all fine and well. The rules are the same. The testing methods are the same, but you are not accepting each other's testing outcomes. And therefore, you need to go into the next step, which is mutual recognition. And this is why ARSO last year said to the TBT, going forward, the greatest challenge for Africa is therefore to take advantage of the AFCFTA opportunities, as well as good regulatory practices as contained in the WTO, TBT, and SPS agreements, to promote an effective regulatory framework that ensures a one test, one certificate accepted everywhere. And that is the golden rule for us. Can we in Africa get to the point where if my product is tested once in one country, I have one certificate, I can present that certificate at the border of the other 53 AU members, and they accept it. And in return, if they send something to my country, I accept their one test certificate. And this is the topic of mutual recognition. And then we have to look at our panel today. My slides were just a very quick introduction. Mercy Mugala from the Zambia Compulsory Standards Organization. She's the technical expert. She will tell us a lot more about the issue and about mutual recognition from a government perspective. Then we will ask Cham Etienne to make the case for mutual recognition for us from a logistics perspective, from his perspective as the as from the Cameroon National Shippers Council, and then lastly we will ask Happiness, Nyiti. She's an entrepreneur from Tanzania, and this is where the rubber hits the road. The entrepreneur saying, "What does mutual recognition mean for me? Why do I want it? Why is it so important?" So it's government first, logistics second in terms of making the case for mutual recognition, and then happiness ending. The panelists will introduce themselves when they start to talk, and then we will have an opportunity for questions. So at this point in time, it's over then to Mercy.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is Mercy Mugala. I'm from Zambia, and I work as a system analyst with a focus on technical regulations under the Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency, which is a government entity under the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. So my work primarily involves driving continuous improvement activities and implementing measures aimed at minimizing audit findings across the organization. So a key part of my role is reviewing documentation to ensure alignment with the evolving trade practices and as well as the latest international standards. Yeah, so I thank you, Trudy, for according me this honor to be here. So I'm here to talk about the non-tariff measures. So these are legitimate public policy objectives. They are legitimate and they cannot be avoided in that they are measures taken to ensure public health and safety, consumer and environmental protection, among other things. But if not properly managed, they can become technical barriers to trade. So in Zambia, the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry ensures that these technical regulations do not become technical barriers to trade under the division of technical regulations under Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. So some common regulators in Zambia are the Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency, the organization where I'm coming from, which is concerned about administering, maintaining, and ensuring public health and safety, consumer and environmental protection. Then we have the Zambia Metrology Agency, which is concerned about the accuracy of the weights and the measures for the products that are being displayed on the market. We also have the Port Health under the Ministry of Health, which is concerned about the disease surveillance and food safety at the entry points for Zambian borders, the plant quarantine and phytosanitary services, the PQPS, under Ministry of Agriculture, is concerned about the sanitary and phytosanitary services as well as the plant health. Then we have the National Livestock and Epidemiological Center, NALEC, which is concerned about the animal disease control. So the Zambia Bureau of Standards, I saw from the water we had yesterday, it had a KEBS logo, and I was so proud of that. This one, the current one, doesn't have. Yeah. So in Zambia, we also have Zambia Bureau of Standards. Here I saw the KEBS, that's Kenya Bureau of Standards. Yeah, so those are the ZABS. Is a national standards body which is concerned about the development of these standards. So ZABS produces both the voluntary and the involuntary standards. So amongst all the standards that the Zambia Bureau of Standards has generated, there are those that the government felt they are too critical and they cannot just be laid back as the government. So they adopted them as the involuntary and they are the, let me say, compulsory standards or mandatory standards. So whether you are producing, manufacturing locally or you are importing that product, it's going to be subjected to testing and inspection. Those fall under compulsory standards and they are being enforced by the Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency. But in case my product, the one I'm producing, doesn't fall under the compulsory standards, I can also go to Zambia Bureau of Standards for product certification because of that ZAB certification mark. So the ZAB certification mark is very essential for value addition to my product, as well as to beat up the masses in terms of competition. It's more likely that when consumers see the two products on the market and one has got a ZAB certification mark, they will prefer the one with the ZAB certification mark. So it helps with competition as well as value addition. So an example of a non-tariff measure, maybe we could look at the water, please, very quick. Yes, so when I look at this water, it's got the product name, natural spring water, followed by the brand name. How do you pronounce it? Is it Myers? Okay, that's the brand name. It's got some batch number there, the manufacture date, expiry date. It's got the nutritional value, the net content, and the manufacturer's address is there. Yeah, so what do these mean? This is one of the preliminary checks which are conducted at the board. And I also serve as the vice chairperson of an organization called She Can Trade, where we help women, supporting them with the critical skills in those who are involved in cross-border trade and SMEs. So this is one of the things we teach them about. Yeah, so when as an SME, it's very important that my label stands out for the sake of exporting. And what should be consistent on that label? There's going to be the product name, which is essential for identity, as well as an emergency response. Maybe if I'm looking for milk in case of an emergency, I'll read it by the product name. The brand name, the Mayors, is essential for consumer preference. In Zambia, we've got Vatra water, we've got Aqua Clear. So you find that maybe I like Aqua Clear water, so I'll identify it by the brand name. So it's essential for consumer preference. The nutritional value will show us the product benefit. Then the manufacturer address is essential in case I have a customer complaint, or just to contact the manufacturer. The net content is essential. There are 500 meals. It's very important. The expiry date is also very important. So when products arrive at the airport and they're already expired, those ones are denied entry immediately. Yeah, and there's also the hazard information for dangerous goods like fertilizer. You find that mark on the petrol tankers and the other fuel tankers. You find there's a hazardous mark there, which is showing us like not to keep near fire and so on. Yeah, those are very essential. For medicines, you find keep out of reach of children. Those are very essential. The physical appearance is important. We also look at the packaging. This is before a product is subjected to laboratory testing. So those are just the some of the preliminary checks that we conduct at the borders. So I'll give an example of fertilizer bags where it needs to have a plastic lining. The sack for fertilizer needs to have a plastic lining, because if it doesn't have that, the fertilizer will be prone to caking. It's going to become brittle, and farmers will be prompted to break it in order to apply in their fields. And the result of that breaking of the fertilizer is going to allow the mineral to escape. So even if the fertilizer has got a nutritional display there, maybe for D compound, it shows NPK 10, 20, 10. As they are breaking that, the nitrates, the nutrients are going to escape. So it's not allowed that fertilizer bags shouldn't have the plastic linings. Very important. So those are some of the things. Maybe I can also add on electrical products, we've got some various standards. South Africa, they've got round pins. For Zambia, we've got square pins. So we look at the pins right at the entry of the product. Some of the challenges being faced under non-tariff measures, this one, I aligned it to especially SMEs, are the fixed costs. So you find that SMEs are allowed to pay as much, the same amount as the large firms would in case of testing and so on. And then there are also regulatory differences. There's an example of paint on the viscosity parameter. So in some tropical regions where it's colder, the viscosity will be lower. Viscosity is the flowability of the paint. It might be lower in certain colder regions, whilst it might be higher in regions like my country. So this is simply maybe outlined to how fast the paint can dry up. in colder regions, the paint dries off very slowly, so the viscosity parameter is lower. And technical limitations, where you find that maybe the laboratory, which is intended to offer the service for laboratory testing, is not able to test a certain parameter. I'll give an example of aflatoxin in grain products. Aflatoxin is a very critical parameter. So if it's not able to do that, we find countries like Botswana, they always want a Zambia Bureau of Standards certificate for grain products. So if it doesn't have certain parameters, there might be a limitation on export of that product. Then there's regulatory fragmentation. You find if maybe I'm an agricultural exporter, and I'm aware of all the regulations under Ministry of Agriculture, I may not be aware of the other regulations concerning my product under another ministry. So when policies are too fragmented, that becomes a challenge as well. So the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry, in an effort to minimize the technical barriers to trade, managed to reduce the presence of border agencies at the border from 24 to only 06. I think they deserve a clap. Yeah, so this has allowed, like Mary Malunga mentioned yesterday, which I fell witness to, it has allowed our traders to only spend a few hours, unlike the much more days that they were spending previously. Because you'd find that the product I'm trading in has got policies under Ministry of Agriculture, under ZCSA, Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency, under Port Health. They were too fragmented, so they've reduced the number of agencies from 24 to only 06. And the ministry also aligns with some international standards. So whenever the ministry feels that certain products do not need fragmentation in terms of standards, they tend to adopt those international standards. 3 examples I'll give are the ZS EN 197 on cement. So they felt cement, the nature of the product does not need fragmentation. So we align with the international standards, the EN 197. And we only add the prefix ZS in front of it. So we say ZS EN 197. That means it's an international standard but has been adopted into our country. The other one is on safety shoes. They also felt it's not necessary to fragment the standards. We adopted the ZS, the ISO 20345, which is the international standard for safety shoes. The other one are the rubber condoms. We also felt there shouldn't be a fragmentation on that product due to safety reasons. And we adopted the international standard, the ISO 4074, which is, we added the ZS prefix in front of it. Yeah. For recommendations, I would recommend the mutual recognition is very important. So whenever the ministry feels that certain products, based on the assessments, the laboratory results, conformity results, they do not need fragmentation, they adopt them, they tend to have mutual recognition. So the ministry has managed to adopt, to sign bilateral relations between Malawi and Zimbabwe, among other countries. Yeah, and the harmonization of standards is mainly encouraged through ASO, the ASO organization. And so far in my country, they have managed to harmonize the GMPs. Yeah, GMPs, which are, what do we call the GMPs? Good manufacturing practices. Yeah, they've managed to, those are the processing. It's about the processing mainly of livestock, fisheries, food and fresh produce. So they've managed to harmonize those processes. So it is assumed that the end product has not been harmonized yet, but they managed with the process. It is assumed that if they can work with the process, definitely the outcome product could be consistent on the safety parameters. Yeah. The other recommendation is on policy transparency. It is very necessary that the non-tariff measures are displayed on the public portal so that the traders can know in advance what will be expected of them. And the ministry has displayed under the ministry website, there's a trade portal which has shown all the non-tariff measures and the specific organizations that are regulating the specific non-tariff measures. So in Zambia, when you go to the specific organizations concerned with that product, it's able to show, for instance, on my website, the Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency, they're able to show all the compulsory standards, and they're able to show as well the testing fees which are aligned with that product. So in terms of AFC FTA progress, this is being done in phases, and Zambia has managed to declare to the Secretariat the Category A non-tariff measures, those have been declared to the Secretariat. It's being done in phases. So the mutual recognition is being done only on bilateral agreements because MOUs have to be signed between the two countries. So what are the measures being taken at Zambia's entry points in terms of non-compliance? So we are facing the highest rate of non-compliances on the agricultural products. And like I mentioned, Botswana requires the Zambia Bureau of Standards certificate for our grain producers, and the aflatoxin level is a critical parameter on the grain products and other agricultural concerns. So Zambia also has bilateral relations with Malawi and Zimbabwe, like I mentioned, among others. And the Zambian honey used to be rejected in South Africa, but we are now being allowed. The other country is Namibia, which wants, it needs the honey to be radiated. But when the honey is radiated, that removes the organic aspect of it. And there's an ongoing concern about milk because, for instance, in Zambia, this was reported on that website there, tradebarriers.org. I don't know if it has been sorted, but the fact that it's still on the website means it could still be unresolved. So the milk is required to be radiated in some countries, which also removes the natural nature of milk. So Zambia allows the milk to have the bacterial load of only up to 200,000 parts per billion, ppb. But in other countries, it is different, and the WTO allows up to 1 million parts per billion. So there are still those wrangles going on concerning the milk product. Zambia has banned the importation of used undergarments. That's in an effort to prevent diseases such as rash. So everything, nightwear, anything that is worn in close proximity to the body should not be worn by another person. So immediately this product arrives at the border, it is either incinerated, re-exported, or destroyed in any manner that is deemed fit. And I mentioned that the issue of labeling was just a preliminary measure, a preliminary check. The products are subjected to laboratory testing. So if they fail on critical parameters, they are also re-exported, incinerated, or destroyed in any manner that is fit for it to be destroyed. So I featured a photo. This is one of the incineration exercises that took part, in which I was supervising. That's an incinerator there at the fire. These are the braziers, other used undergarments. We had to incinerate them right at entry. Yes, I rest my case.
Thank you, Mercy. I think you can take your seat now, and then we'll do all the questions and stuff later. The picture I get is that Zambia is doing its best to follow the playbook. Firstly, when they look at creating a standard, they look at basing it on an international standard. Then secondly, they look at harmonizing standards across the African continent, which is good. And then when they look at the further steps of testing and certification, conformity assessment, they are doing things which would be music to the ears of Cham and happiness. They are saying, let's do bilaterals. If you accept my testing outcomes, then I will accept your testing outcomes. If you accept my test certificate, I accept yours. And they also do the ASO playbook, which is one certificate, one test, one certificate accepted in 54 countries. So all good news and a good example. And later on there will be, I guess, questions on this. And then we have to move on to Cham to give us, from a shipping perspective, where are we on avoiding dual testing, duplication testing? Where are we here in Africa on one test, one certificate, 54 countries?
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm Cham Etienne. I'm a technical advisor to the CEO of Cameroon National Shipping Council, which is equally a government agency that supports cross-border trade and also oversee transportation of goods between Cameroon and other countries across the world. I was invited to look at the case for mutual recognition when it comes to technical regulations and standards. And to do that, I want to take us back to 2012 on a practical case, this time not on goods, but on services. Under a joint program funded by the World Bank, African Development Bank, and the beneficiary countries, Cameroon and Nigeria, there was an agreement to develop a corridor from Bamenda to Enugu. Bamenda is in Cameroon, Enugu is in Nigeria. And one of the issues in this project was harmonization, axle load and vehicle dimension. Remember, Cameroon is French, Nigeria is English. There was need to accept on the same tonnage and vehicle dimension for highway transportation. The debate went on for more than 2 years. At the end, there was no agreement. That is on terms of harmonization. So the final decision was that in each territory, the highway legislation, that's technical regulation in terms of transport, will be respected because that is mandatory compared to standards which are voluntary. And in Nigeria, when trucks are crossing over to Nigeria, they will have to comply. Now, in practical terms, what does this imply? Cameroon's tonnage is higher than Nigeria. So when you load your goods in Cameroon and you're transporting them to Nigeria on this highway, because the agreement specifies that it covers Enugu and Bamenda, you have to offload the excess tonnage at the border and then drive on with the rest of the consignment. It's a serious problem for shippers, and that is what is happening. To resolve this problem, we had to develop facilities which can allow them to offload and keep some of the consignment there, and they can use smaller trucks to move. So this is a clear example of issues in terms of mutual recognition or harmonization of legislation when it comes to cross-border trade. It is the same when it comes to trading goods between Cameroon and Nigeria. I'm taking this particular case because it is something I've been working on daily basis. Under the AFCFTA, when Nigeria announced their full onboarding process, we had a shipment to Nigeria, cosmetic products. And their consignment was worth about $350,000, which is quite a lot of money in a local currency. So the shipper reached out to me to support them to make sure these goods arrive in Nigeria. And one of the requirements the importer was asking was NAFDAC certification. NAFDAC is the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control in Nigeria, which oversees standards. And we had to unleash the process. It took us 3 weeks because we don't know what happens in Nigeria. I had to go online, do research. And at the end, the supplier told me, I won't be able to follow this process. Please, let's drop it. And that's a shipment of a huge amount of money that was dropped. And the business till today has not continued. So we reached out to NAFDAC and said, what can we do? NAFDAC told us, you need just to get a law firm and they will do the process for you. And we said, we are now talking on government to government. Can we open up a communication channel where we can actually work together to understand what are the obstacles and look for solutions? It is important to remind us that there is a mixed commission between Cameroon and Nigeria, which oversees a chunk of issues, amongst which security to tackle the Islamist militias in the northern part of the country. The most prominent of the commission is the Peace and Security Commission. The Trade and Industry Commission is not working. So we proposed to them if we could actually open up communication within this framework. And discussions are still going. We are looking forward to that. So these regulations are fragmented, and it is not only the case between Cameroon and Nigeria. Across the continent, we have 54 countries. And my predecessor, Mercy, talked about from 24 technical agencies in Zambia to 6. But I bet with you in some countries there are more than 24 and they still exist, from meteorological agencies to livestock agencies to health agencies. These are institutions that play a critical role in cross-border trade. And the question is, how do we harmonize all these agencies or actually come to a mutual recognition arrangement with this agency for goods as well as for services? Bearing in mind that even within some countries, inter-university movement of students is not even allowed. If you're in the second year in University X and you want to move to University Y, you have to start at fresh. So you start to ask yourself, if we can harmonize internally, how are we going to harmonize externally? And one other issue we looked at with Nigeria is in terms of advertisement. We remember 2 years ago, Nigeria introduced a ban on using foreigners on their billboards for advertisement. This is already an issue which needs to be tackled. So there are a host of them that surfaces every day, and we don't think that the AFCFTA alone as a framework can actually address all of this. Then bilateral engagements become the normal, but then other issues, realities, cultural backgrounds, French and English, we never agree with Nigeria. They will always tell us, please, you have French culture, we have English culture, we cannot agree. These discussions have been there. They always tell us, and first of all, you bring documents in French, we can't read. The translated version is not exact. These are the issues we have, but then we must trade. We have to keep trade going. So with our work, we support traders as we can. We do capacity building, both for Nigerian and Cameroon border officers, to make sure that we bridge information gap, which at times is at the origin of information. Even at the level of customs, we have tried to see how we can interchange information. Cameroon is using CAMSIS, that's the software. Nigeria is using Asikuda. How do they interoperate? So practically, these are some of the challenges that doesn't really allow trade to flow across our borders. But what we do is we provide the information so as to prepare them ahead before they arrive at the borders, especially our land borders. Maritime borders, those are conventional trade routes which actually have been there for long, and then most of them are professionals. But now on the land borders, which is where an important part of our cross-border trade is happening, what should we do? So this is where harmonization or mutual recognition agreement can play a critical role to support the women and the youth who are an important part of those who are working across our borders. So this is the small introductory statement I had. I'll be taking questions on other issues that are related to MRAs or other operational aspects of cross-border trade. Thank you.
Thanks, Cham. I think the most important point is governments will have to start talking to each other even more, even if they don't like each other. But if we want the AFCFTA to get somewhere, maybe it's a bit of a learning about intra-African trade being so low. We always look outside. We don't look inside Africa. And on mutual recognition, we have to talk to each other, avoid duplication and so on. And then we move on to our entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs, they are the people who will take us forward and will save us. So you have an important duty to tell us your experiences on mutual recognition and bilaterals, and how you went about to get some success in that area, and what your experiences have been so far. So over to you then, Happiness.
Good afternoon once again. My name is Happiness Nyiti, founder and managing director of Aja Tanzania Limited. We are producer and exporter of sisal fiber. Within Africa, we're exporting to 10 countries, especially in ECOWAS countries. And And also we are exporting to Europe and Asia. Sisal is using for construction. Now we are going to automotives, also in energy, and can be used as a solution to climate change. That is also a good part we are in. We are exported under CFTA 90%, but I think Ghana are the only country which are utilizing CFTA when it comes to preferential product. They're enjoying that. And our capacity per year, now we are going to 5,000 tons exported within those countries, and 90% is going to Africa. First, we reported one NTB, and this NTB was reported by Tanzania Sisal exporters. And this is just, I think I just showed the Sisal crop. Most of the people, they're asking me what is the Sisal. And this is how we brand. These are the three categories. There are UG, SSUG, and TO. These are the categories which most of the time we're exporting in Tanzania. And also, this is the report for 2023. And you can see that the first country is China, and it's followed up with Nigeria. And Ghana, there is Ghana, Morocco, Ghana. And when it comes to ECOWAS markets, you can see this. And the volume was percent is 28%, 28%. But 2024 to 2025, I think Nigeria will be number one, Ghana number two, and we changed the game. Now China, I think it will be number three. And this is initiative, and when we talk about CFTA gives us the green light to do business within Africa. And we have the scenario of exporting to Europe, then it comes back to Africa. We're exporting to China, it comes back to Africa. So now we manage as exporters from East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, Madagascar also, to export within Africa. And now Ghana, they are paying duty, I think it's 1.4% out of, I think, 6 or 10. So they are enjoying the preferential. So when it comes to Sisal fiber quality inspection, you are looking on length, strength, free from dust, free from impurities, colors, weight, and properly brushed. Those are the things, those are the things that we are looking on. The NTB we reported is regarding our beloved brothers and sisters from Nigeria. We used to do inspection in Tanzania and conformity assessment we done here in Tanzania, but according to their standard, they subjected Sisal to be pre-inspected before arrived in Nigeria. We accept that standard. It's very good. Every country has that kind of standards. But the same way they are doing inspection, Tanzania authority, they are doing inspection, and Nigeria, they have already subcontracted to other authority to do inspection on their behalf. They are using the same parameters of conformity of assessment for quality. So it's a double work cost, direct cost, and also wastage of time, because all of them, they are doing at the port. So you are running to make sure that you're exporting your product on time, but can wait. And unfortunately, those service provider from Nigeria are based in Nairobi, are not based in Tanzania. So there is a lot of delay and a lot of communication barriers. Then when we introduced this NTB, the CFTA, starting following up, we had a discussion with Nigeria Bureau of Standards and Tanzania Bureau of Standards, together with private sector. I was representing CISO exporters. We had like 4 meetings, and we end up agreed that Tanzania has to write a letter to the government of Nigeria to have a mutual agreement that when Tanzania inspects the CISO, the certificate has to be accepted in Nigeria. So the letter have already been submitted to Nigeria. We hope to get a positive reply from Nigeria. So now this NTB is almost now 1 year, but we are doing good in that part, and we are communicating very well between each other. That is the case we had in CISO. Thank you.